sites and through our applications. And I think you have to be just as conscious of making decisions for users' understandability as you do about developers' understandability.
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes down to what's idiomatic. And I mean, you can have idiomatic in a language, you can have idiomatic in the the wider dev community. You can also have what's idiomatic in your team, and what's understandable in your team. If you've got a good idea of the level of knowledge of the devs in your team, write to that level. Actually, write to the lower level. Don't write to the highest, the most experienced dev in your team. Obviously, try and lift up the juniors, and maybe don't write to maybe don't write to a completely junior level. But it's really important that you don't like overface your team with techniques or technologies that they have no idea how to use. Which I mean, I had some experience with this, and in a previous company. Where do you remember microservices being a really big thing?
Oh yeah.
I mean, they kind of technically still are, but
everybody was talking about them all the time, and it was like, why are we not doing microservices? It's going to be so much better, and it was just evangelizing constantly.
I mean, now it's micro front ends, of course. Micro front ends and module federation, and it's the next big thing, and it just feels like the same kind of hype cycle again. And in this previous company, the CTO had a big thing about microservices. No one on the team had ever implemented microservices before, and I said to him at the time, I said, no one knows how to do this. If you try and implement this, it will take forever. We will do it wrong the first time. And I'm still not convinced it's the right thing to do, because we're actually quite small. Our code base is quite small. If we have a monolith and split it out within that monolith, it'll be fine. Just make it a bit more readable. But no, we went ahead of that, and he ended up giving quite a lot of microservices work to one of the more junior devs on the team, and the stuff that ended up being written was just appalling. It was bad. I mean, that dev learned a lot, but he ended up being the only one who could actually modify it, because the rest of us were getting on with other features in our little monolith, and he was like plugging away at this microservices stuff in the background, and it was complicated. I mean, it didn't help that we were doing it on Azure as well, but or maybe it did help. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to do another system, but I believe they've probably. I left. After they hadn't implemented microservices by the time I left. Is the point I was trying to make. But I firmly believe that many years later they've probably still not moved entirely over to microservices. I wouldn't be surprised if they did entirely. But we now have the same problem with micro front ends, and I think it's the same problem again. It's complicated. No, I know very few people who really understand how to do it, and most of the time I don't think you really do need it. It's just a buzzword.
So what is this appeal then? I mean, if there's these new ways of coding, these like be they fads or not fads, whatever we want to call them, but what is it about them that becomes so appealing or so attractive? Why do people want to start implementing them if they aren't ultimately going to be widely accepted, or if they're just going to overcomplicate the process? Like, why is it that we're trying so hard again and again? If it was microservices then and it's modular federation now, like what is it that keeps bringing us back to trying to use overly complicated code?
I think part of it is the same problem that companies have with what is it, Gartner hype cycle or whatever it is. Companies will take a look at what is Google doing, what is Facebook doing, we should be doing that, and they're like a million times smaller. Like, you don't want to be doing what Google's doing because it works for Google, because Google is massive. You want to be doing whatever works for a company your size, and it's this it's like fear of missing out. You hear all this hype in all of the news, but you want to be in on that. We want to be one of the cool kids, and that's not how you become one of the cool kids. You've got to work your way up there, and there's like levels of appropriateness that maybe don't look as cool, but are definitely better for you.
In this conversation, we've gone through quite a bit of subjects. Like we've gone from people sort of hiding information accidentally. We've gone through sort of this cliquey nature, and then now we're at sort of a point of discussing overcomplicating architectures and project delivery plans, right? Which is good, which is fantastic. Don't be sorry. This is fantastic. It all fits together, right? You've discovered a theme, and that's why I was really excited about this episode. It's like I feel like you're sort of hitting on the theme of just like it's almost like elitism that we don't even realize we're doing, and we don't need to be doing all of these things, and it's actually harming us.
Oh, it really is. I mean, the idea that you need to know everything about everything is, I mean, it's wrong for a start, because no one can ever know everything about everything. Development is a learning process. Being a developer means you are constantly learning, and just because I'm a what was it, senior dev architect, whatever it is now, doesn't mean I know everything. God no, it means I have a better grasp of how much I do not know. Maybe.
I like that. Well, and you're good at figuring things out for the needs of the company, and working at Narwhal, y'all do a lot of consulting, and so you go through a lot of different architectural plans. You don't get to sit back necessarily and well, we made it this much better, this much faster, this much smaller. The bundle size is this much more discrete. But now, what are we gonna do next? It's like people bring you in to solve problems. One of the things
that's what it's all about, solving problems, and that's partly why I love development. It's you get a puzzle, and you get to work away towards the answer, and then something else comes along. It reminds me of mathematics a bit in that sense, in that there's like a defined way. Well, there aren't that there's millions of ways of doing a thing, but once you've got a solution, it's kind of set. It works. It's provable. It's a concrete thing.
There was an epiphany that I had yesterday. It was a small one. All right. I often tell people I love programming because I like solving puzzles, but I don't really like sitting down and doing jigsaw puzzles necessarily and things like that. I like the aha moment, the euphoria I feel when I figure out something and I see it working. And I finally traced it back to this moment in my childhood. All right, and it's y'all. I'm a huge nerd. This is already known, so feel free to judge. But you know this about me, so you know where I'm going. Video games. All right. When I was 5, I played a video game on an Apple I machine. Was it Apple I or Apple II? This video game is called Odyssey, the Nemesis. And this was a very interesting game because you could move and then you type your commands as to what you wanted your character to do. If you wanted to talk to a villager who's like this little pixel person, then you could talk to them and you'd say talk, and then I can't remember exactly how it went, but you'd write out that you want to talk to the person in the square above you or whatever. This was a very interesting game, and it was very complicated for a very young man. Young boy. And there was this moment when I have older brothers and older sisters, and my directly older sibling is a brother, and he was 3.5 years older than me, and he could not figure out how to get past a certain part of the game. And I am extremely competitive, and I can point back to that moment. I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. The part of the game had little fires in these grid spaces, and you couldn't walk past the fires. And the game had no help manual. This is before, like, I don't remember there being internet back then. I'm sure there was, but it wasn't available to me. So I couldn't look up any answers anywhere. And I was like, okay, to get past the fire, it turned out that I had to throw an item from my inventory into the square with the fire, and then type extinguish, and then that item that was in that square. So you drop the thing, and then you'd extinguish the thing, and the fire would go out, and then you could walk there, you could pick up your thing again, because I guess it didn't burn, or maybe it did burn, I can't remember, and you'd extinguish the fire, and that's how you did it. That moment for me was such a triumph. It was such a triumph. Not only did I beat my brother, which is always a triumph, which is fantastic, but I also solved something really hard, and that gave me a taste for something that I really enjoy still today, which is solving a very difficult problem. Now, the toxic part of that is that I really wanted to beat my brother and do something that he couldn't, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. Is look what I do. Look at the ego that is in this puzzle solving that we do. That ego is.
I wonder actually how much of that sort of attitude for a lot of the developers comes from that era of no internet, and you run your own. If you couldn't figure out Monkey Island, you could maybe ask someone who lives next door to you, but you can go online and just look up an entire walkthrough. And that sort of sense of achievement when you finally figured out, oh my god, I can use the monkey as a wrench, because monkey wrench. God, that took me so long. But yeah, there's an amazing sense of achievement. But then now it's more about sharing stuff with everyone else. I mean, that's what the internet's all about, really. And it makes the process of development so much easier. Oh my god, because so much of it is still very, very hard. And I mean, actually, not because it needs to be, but because the information just isn't easily discoverable.
So I have a question for you, and this definitely goes to the more selfish, like Erik is saying, the egotistical side to this. And it really is for both of you, because I've had some experiences throughout my career where, like, let's say I had been working with someone on a particular story, right? And I went and I solved it. I had a working solution for solving the problem, shared it with someone, and this other person kind of rejected the idea because, well, I don't know why. And that's kind of the mystery behind it. Like, I don't know why, but it was like every time I was showing solutions to this person, they would reject them. Only later for me to find out that overnight, like off work hours, this person would take my work, tweak it a little bit, and then submit my PR as their own. And it was very problematic. And luckily, the situation kind of like just sorted itself out because that person was eventually moved to a different team. I think it was totally just coincidental, kind of a lucky thing. But my question for you is, if you recognize that this is going on, if you recognize that you're the person who's on the other side of someone else's information hiding, or them kind of, playing.
That's just toxic behavior.
It is very toxic. But what do you do? And even if it's not that serious, even if it's more mild in nature, if you recognize this kind of behavior on your team, like you were saying, Johanna, there was someone who was kind of like at their desk, typing away and creating overly complicated code that only that individual knew how to solve. So all of those possible scenarios, if you recognize it, what do you do to squash it out, to try to eliminate it or make it better? How can we get rid of it?
It depends what you are in pecking order, unfortunately.
True.
I mean, if you've got the authority, if you're actually like tech lead or dev lead on that team, then yeah, you can maybe do something about it. If it is the dev lead that's doing that, then yeah, keep your head down, make your money, you'll be fine. Learn what you can, move on to the next job. Or maybe make some friends in management. I don't know. There are political ways around this. It depends how Machiavellian you are. Or get them moved to another team. Make it another team's problem. Really boost them. Make them sound amazing. Have another team poach them, and then they'll find out how terrible they are. But you'll be free.
That's awesome.
Well, who knows? And sometimes you think that, like, I don't know. Sometimes you think that there's nothing you can do, but if you do keep your head down and if you do work, at least there's other things you can learn from that job. I like you gave a lot of options there, Joanna, and that was fantastic. Some jobs they're not your end job. They're not the place you're going to retire at. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, there's this whole idea that you should find a job that you love, and only the job that you love is the one that's that's worth doing. And if you're in some kind of and the whole concept of a dead end job is kind of toxic in a way as well. Some people just go and make money, go and make money to survive. And I think we don't. I mean, maybe as a society, not just as developers, we don't recognize that often enough. Some people just they get whatever work they can get. Maybe that involves writing email spam scripts. I will judge people for doing that actually, but it depends what's around.
Okay.
Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just gonna say, the only solutions I've kind of found when things like this happen, whether it was this particular situation I was talking about or something less severe, but kind of a couple things I've found I think would be somewhat helpful. And the first one is just, it really does, Johanna, you kind of pointed it out, it depends on your position in the company, right? Your position on the team. So you may not have the power to do this, but for those managers or team leads who are listening, you do have that power. You do have the ability to create an environment that is healthier and not as competitive or cutthroat. So I think that this individual was feeling like they needed to do that to me because they felt like they had to prove themselves. And I really wonder, had the environment been set up differently, had the manager created an environment where it wasn't so cutthroat and where it was more team together, I kind of don't think that would have happened. So I think if you are in a position where you can create and establish how the team runs, if it's team unity or more like individualism, I think definitely take charge and create what you want your team to be like. But another thing that I found, and this is where I was able to give myself some of that power back, interestingly, was finding examples from like well-respected people in the community, a lot of them being speakers from NGConf or bloggers or YouTubers who've really like built a reputation or a name for themselves. And if you can find examples from their work and say like, this is where I'm getting my solution from, when you can do that, then I think, if someone's over there trying to overcomplicate their code, and you come in and you say, well, actually, there was a talk that John Papa gave at NGConf 2019, and it was a lightning talk, and he actually spoke all about how to keep things simple and how simple code is, like the way to go. And I think when you can bring in those kinds of examples, those kinds of, I guess, authority figures, if you want to call them that, but respected individuals, then people are less likely to contend with you.
Absolutely. I mean, I just on Copies Live actually in programming a while ago. No, oh God, it really has been a while ago. But Copies Live is a really useful concept in programming, and that's the reason you should make things simpler and easy to understand, because you can only handle a limited number of things in your working memory at any one time, and the fewer things you have to juggle, the more easily you can understand the code. And if you're constantly having to keep like a million and one like function definitions and the locations of files, and why this file is in a different format to this file, and why if you haven't got conventions, because conventions are shortcuts to memory, then yeah, you can overload your devs far too easily. So yes, making simple.
Yeah. Okay. I actually have a question. This is more of like a curiosity, because I know a lot of our listeners love and use the NX DevTools. So do you have an example of this at all where you've, either from the programmer's perspective or even from the user's perspective, where you've had to really keep things understandable? Maybe you've had to clean up something that was so really complicated, or you went into it on like intentionally saying we want it to be understood this way. So I don't know, is there an example that you can think of that would be kind of speaking to what we've been discussing here on the episode?
I mean, perhaps some of the way that some of the generators work, will often offer sensible defaults for a lot of the parameters, or we'll offer we'll ask you questions. Sometimes we'll explain what we mean by each of these things as we're going along. So all you have to do is like type in the NXG something whatever plugin it is app, and it can just take you through. Do you want this kind of app? Do you want it to do this? Do you want it to do this? And that's reducing your cognitive load. You don't have to remember all of the parameters. So that's a nice easy thing to do. In NXCloud we've got some. Actually, it's a generator. It's another generator, but there's an NXCloud generator which will now generate your entire CI script if you want to use distributed task execution. Because we accept distributed task execution is actually quite tricky to set up. Conceptually, it's kind of a difficult thing. How do you distribute everything across all of these agents? But the scripts are actually set it up on the various major CI systems, GitHub Actions, and I think we've got Azure and Circle as well. And we can just generate that for you. You just give us some information, and we'll just generate a very, very basic script for you. And then you can work on it from there. But that means we can get people up and running with something really fast, and that's what we want. And hopefully that's what they want.
I couldn't reach my hand.
I just digressed a lot here.
No, that was a great answer to the question. I was just feeling so much love for Narwhal. In my career, I'm always benefiting from like the benefits of NX, and like distributed caching is just one example of that. The fact that you've made something pretty complex into something that will just spin up on Circle CI or Azure or whatever. It's like pretty crazy. In fact, it's pretty relevant to what we're talking about today, because we're talking about how it's a lot of times in our culture as an industry, we're hiding information, we're making things more complicated than they need to be. The true heroes in our community are not Rockstar developers, 10x developers. They're the folks who are building things and creating things, content. It could be open source, it could be a lot of things that are making the hard things very, very easy. You mentioned how we don't code in binary anymore, like most of us, but instead we're coding in higher level languages. And the reason why we're doing that is because we don't need to code in binary to write apps. We are building upon the pioneers and the innovators of the past. And so the pioneers and innovators of the future are not the people who can hide information, they're the people who can make it unnecessary to know the information. That's
scary, but probably also true. Like I see in the future people are going to be putting together programs like putting together Lego. And
so.
You'll say, okay, what do I need here? I need that function. I need a thing that does this. And if they need that thing that does that, and it's going to be like AI generated art. It will probably look like AI generated art as well. It'll be that bad to begin with, but eventually, it's going to be about it's going to be like creative writing. I think. I do think about programming as being a bit like creative writing anyway.
It definitely is an art form. As much as it is a science, computer science, it is definitely an art form.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
So I love the conversation we've had. I think it's definitely bringing some really good awareness to, it doesn't matter what level you're at in your career. I think it's just good to be aware of these things and remembering to keep things understandable, easy to comprehend for everybody involved. Absolutely. I would love to hear, though, if you have any favorite learning resources or tools or, like content contributors who you have really found to be helpful, have helped you to like decomplicate things yourself. I don't know if that's really a word, but just anything like that.
This is really hard because I have to admit to being something of a technical Luddite online. I've got a Twitter account. I don't actually use it very much.